Hello and thanks for joining me. I'm out for a ride today on my Triumph Scrambler 1200. At the time of recording this, it's autumn time, and I'm just thinking to myself, for the first time in 40 odd years of biking, I'm seriously considering SORNing some of my bikes over winter. SORNing, if you're not from the UK, means taking it off the road, so it's not taxed, so you can't legally ride it on the road. But of course you don't have to pay tax, so it saves some money. Times are hard here in the UK. I can't speak for other countries, but here in the UK we've had a huge increase in the cost of living. Food prices have shot up, fuel prices, electricity prices for heating your home over winter, rents have gone up if you're renting your house, interest rates have gone up, so anything that you have you've got finance on, interest rates have gone up, and it just means for many people now, unfortunately, just putting a roof over your head and putting food on the table is becoming a struggle. And if you are providing for a family as well, for many people that's just using up all of their money, which leaves very little left over for what essentially is a luxury in life, which is owning a motorcycle to go out and ride, unless it's your main means of transport and you commute to work on it, of course. But for most of us, including myself, now I'm retired, having a motorcycle is a luxury for going out for rides like this. So yeah, I've been thinking about SORNing some of my bikes, including this one, over the winter. And I've also just been generally thinking about ways of saving money. So I put this video together as some tips for biking on a budget, how you can save money and bike on a budget. So here we go. I've got a few points. I can't remember how many. I'll just reel them off. So the first thing is, if you don't already own a bike, you're looking at buying one, or maybe you've got one on finance, you're looking to get rid of that finance cost, then I would seriously recommend looking at an older bike. Buy yourself an older second-hand bike. There are some really good bargains about, and particularly as we get into the winter months, bike prices are always suppressed over winter, so that's a good time to be buying. I'm amazed at how cheap some bikes are. Early John Bohr era Triumphs, particularly. So the Triumphs from the 1990s, amazingly cheap. Some of these bikes, amazingly cheap. And I was looking the other day at a BMW GS 1200. I think it was a 2008 GS 1200 for just £2,000. There's some awesome bargains out there. Now obviously I'm just talking about big bikes there. You look around for smaller bikes as well, and if you have the money together to be able to go and buy something like that in cash, you've got a bike that's not going to depreciate, you've got a bike that you're not paying any finance on, and that is a huge saving. Over my life I've only ever bought one brand new bike. In 40 odd years of riding, I've lost count of the number of bikes I've owned in that time, but I've only ever bought one new bike. Most of the bikes I've bought privately, so that's always cheaper than buying from a dealer. And I've always saved up the money to buy a bike, so I don't buy bikes on finance. I save up the money, buy a bike second hand. If you're unsure about buying second-hand bikes, somewhere on my Buy Me a Coffee page, and I'll put a link at the bottom of this, I've got a guide to what to look out for if you're buying an older bike, a checklist if you're going to look at an older bike. So I'll put that link up there. So that's my first tip about buying something older and cheaper, and then you haven't got finance, you haven't got the cost of a new bike. The second suggestion is do as much service work yourself as you can, and particularly if you've then got an older bike that's out of warranty, you're not worried about warranty or terms of PCP contracts, then you can do more yourself. And older bikes tend to be much easier to work on. I mean, just compare the cost of going out and buying a bottle of engine oil, a filter, a new air filter and some spark plugs. You can get all of that for £80–90 compared to the cost of then taking your bike to a dealer to have it serviced. And these days there's so many good videos on YouTube if you're not sure what to do. You can learn. Even just buying a basic toolkit is fairly cheap. You don't need a lot of sophisticated complex tools for just doing basic servicing. So, if you've got an older bike where you're not worried about getting that dealer stamp there and warranties and things, then it becomes a lot more viable doing your own service work. So that's my second tip. My third tip is buying second-hand riding gear. You don't have to go out and buy everything brand new. You can get some fantastic bargains in like second-hand jackets and waterproofs and boots, things like that, on eBay or on Facebook Marketplace. I'm always trawling through eBay and Facebook Marketplace, and there's some great bargains out there to be snatched up. So again, you can save huge amount of money. I remember when I started riding at first, for the first few years I was riding, all of my riding gear, even my helmet, my gloves, everything were hand-me-down. I didn't have anything that I bought new myself. Everything had been handed down from older bikers that I knew, and that got me on the road and got me going at very little cost. So that's my third tip. My fourth suggestion is shop around for insurance. Now, it used to be the case that you were rewarded for loyalty with insurance companies, but that's no longer the case. The number of years that you were with the insurance company, your premiums went down, and of course you built up no claims bonuses. But these days, they get you in with a cheap first-year deal, and then they bang the cost up. So I would say every year shop around. Go on the price comparison sites, shop around, have a look at people's recommendations on forums, and see if you can get something cheaper. And quite often that can be a haggling point with your existing insurer. So you can say, well, look, I've been offered the premium, 20, 30, 40 pounds cheaper with another insurance company. And quite often, if you haggle, they'll bring the price down because they don't want to lose you. Another interesting thing, because I own multiple bikes, I've found that these days a multi-bike policy is not necessarily the best value. I used to insure all my bikes on one policy, and then I was haggling, it was about 2 years ago now, I was haggling with my insurance broker on the phone, and he said, well, let me just check out some different policies for you. And he came back suggesting splitting the bikes up, doing different policies, and that actually ended up saving me quite a lot of money. That then gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of shopping around. If one particular bike is expensive to insure for some reason, then you could possibly, rather than tag your other bikes on that policy, get your other bikes on a cheaper policy. So again, shop around. Okay, so I think, what was that? Tip number 4. Tip number 5 is, and this is what I was talking about at the start of the video, if you only ride your bike over the summer, then take it off the road and don't tax it over the winter. So in the UK, you can do what's called a SORN, S-O-R-N, statutory off-road notice, and you notify the DVLA that your bike will not be used on the road, and you don't have to pay tax, or if you've already got some tax left on the bike, they will refund you the full month that left on the tax. Obviously, don't do that if you intend to ride the bike even occasionally. It is illegal to ride the bike on the road. But if, like me, I've decided that some of my bikes now I'm only going to tax over the summer, and so they just go in the back of the garage on a battery tender, with a cover over them, and they're not taxed. They're SORNed. And at the price of tax on bigger bikes, that can save a couple of £100 a year doing that. Okay, I can't remember, what was that, number 5, I think? Yeah, so final one then, tip number 6, and that is looking after your bike, really looking after your bike and keeping on top of it in terms of the little things to reduce wear and make things last longer. So the simple things like checking your tyre pressures regularly to make sure your tyres are at the right pressure, then they will last longer, if you look after them. Similarly with your chain. Regularly clean your chain, lubricate your chain. I lubricate my chain before every single ride, and maintain the adjustment on the chain, and your chain will last much, much longer. And of course that then saves a lot of money. So, you know, just keeping on top of things like that saves you expenses. You know, same, I guess it's more difficult to reduce wear on brake pads, but certainly I clean my brakes, service my brakes a couple of times a year in the spring and in the autumn, and that just keeps on top of them and makes sure that you know, there's not going to need any major work. So, you know, my general point there is just pay attention to looking after your bike and making things last longer. So yeah, just some thoughts there on biking on a tighter budget. I hope you found that interesting and useful. Thanks very much for watching. Ride safe. Hopefully see you again soon. Bye.